Welcome to Striking Gold, the Motherlode Landscape. I'm Levi Flores. We have Jeremy Hurtado and Danny Scott with us today. Danny, thanks for being here. We've had the U here separately the last 2 weeks, but I'm glad we can actually have you alive and in person. The Motherlode League has been thriving since league play has started. This is the first time you've joined us since league has started, but you've also joined us in the booth as well, being with a few Somerville games. But going over this week, Amador, Somerville, that was a good game. Valley Christian, Argonaut, Sonora at Calaveras. All three of those teams, Argonaut being the only one that didn't play a league opponent. But Jeremy, why don't you start us off with Somerville, Amador?
This is the game that you guys were at. It was a pretty close game. Amador jumped out on early, 12-0. Kind of looked like, Somerville might be in trouble a little bit. And then Somerville kind of, woke up, let's say, and kind of found their legs after the bus ride there and scored 42 straight points. And it just kind of took over from there. And it's one of those things where it's kind of been a trend the last couple weeks. 2 weeks ago, we saw it against Argonaut where Somerville went over there and didn't have a great first half against them either. So that's kind of concerning, I think. Why is it that these road games are having a difficulty starting the game off? They make adjustments at halftime, which is a great job by the coaching staff and getting things done. But the concerning part is you can't let teams, especially good teams as you go into the playoffs, jump on you early and be able to come back.
Danny?
Yeah, I agree. You mentioned jumping out 12-0, and I think it was the long bus ride as well, but they come back, score, was it 42 or 49 unanswered points? I couldn't
42 remember. Unanswered, Amador scored, and then Somerville was able to do it.
Gotcha. Well, regardless, the final score winding up 49-18. It was a dominant win for Somerville. They played a very good 3 quarters, and that first quarter was a little rough, allowing 2, or I guess it was the first play of the second quarter. They allowed their second touchdown, but regardless, after that, they turned it on. The defense stepped up. They forced a couple turnovers, but for Amador, the big thing is not turning the ball over. When they went the entire first half without turning the ball over, it was a decent game. You get into the second half, Somerville was able to force 3 turnovers, and then the game starts to get out of hand.
Yeah, and all those turnovers were interceptions in which we knew Amador would likely throw an interception. I was heavily surprised that the first half was absolutely clean, just because teams turn the ball over, not because they're a bad team. It's just they do it so often, and the Somerville defense has been one notable thing about their entire team this year, that not allowing any of that, pretty impressive by Amador. Second half, went into the locker room. I know some of the Somerville coaches had to talk their players into it, say, hey, we need to get back into this. This is not okay. And just like the playoff situation, we can't do this in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Like right now, we know we're better than Amador, and that's just how it is. That's what we've shown. And I know we can come back, but we can't do that in the playoffs. So we need to play as if it's the playoffs now. So those 3 turnovers, Bryson Benitez, the kicker, is now 47 of 47 on extra point attempts, though he did miss a field goal. So that's his 3rd of the season, 0 of 3 in field goals. But he is top 10 in the state for kickers, and he's only a sophomore. Only one way to go up, and that is up. Yeah, one way to go, and that's up. You guys know the saying. We're all sports people. Somerville ended up taking down Amador 49-18. Our predictions for this, I had 42-17 Somerville. Jeremy, you had 35-21 Somerville. And although Amador did come out swinging in the beginning, Amador coming out swinging, Somerville still took the lead, 49-18. So I get 2 points, you get 1. And did you have any prediction on this?
Yeah, 49-18 Somerville.
Oh, there you go. Good job, Dan.
Okay. Yeah, appreciate that. Also, from the first time you were on Striking Gold, you went pretty well in that, and that's why we haven't had you on.
Yeah, I know.
So.
Yeah, Levi was a little concerned you were going to take his title, but he's been at the bottom of the standings the last couple weeks, so he figured anything to kind of change up the momentum this week.
No, I probably, if I had to guess pregame, well, always hindsight's 20/20, but around this score, I probably would have said, 42 to 7 or something like that. That's kind of what I figured. But Amador does a good job. They've been able to put up points all year, it seems like. So they got a tough task against Sonora this week, but good for them for putting up 18 against Somerville. They missed that first extra point try, then go for 2 and 2 remaining, unable to get it. But still putting up 18 points on the Somerville team. I believe only Dos Palos has put up over 20 on them. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Argonaut scored 21.
21.
And then Dos Palos was the only other team.
So no team has been able to put up more than 3 touchdowns on the Somerville defense, but still for a league opponent, I feel like that's pretty good against this stout Somerville team.
I agree. And now moving on to Argonaut, who played a non-league opponent in Valley Christian. Before we get into the statistics and everything that happened, this was one game where before we started our show last week, Jeremy said, you're going to shock the world. I'm going to say Argonaut's going to win this game, in which we both thought Valley Christian probably would handily take it. But you did shock the world, and so did Argonaut, taking down Valley Christian not only by a touchdown or one score, but by 47 points, in which they shut down Valley Christian 47-0.
No, absolutely. It was kind of just a hunch. I mean, they kind of got things rolling against Somerville a little bit there, especially in the first half of play. They kind of petered out in the second half. But I just kind of felt like they had some momentum, positive going, and then they came out, and then Valley Christian was favored to win, but it's hard to go Argonaut and win a game. And it really is, especially if you're a Division 7 team coming up and you're trying to match up against that Argonaut offense, which is a little different. And Mitchell does a great job running it. So he came out and led his team to 35-0 halftime score, and then, like I said, it was all over from there.
Yeah, what was really impressive to me was the Argonaut defense. They had two interceptions, 3 total turnovers, had a fumble, but negative 13 rushing yards on the game. And that's incredibly impressive, and only 83 receiving yards, so 67 total yards of offense allowed. I think Argonaut, you talked about it last week, I believe, with Calaveras. They're peaking at the right time. Mm-hmm. That kind of got shut down a little bit against Sonora, which we'll talk about in a second, but I think Argonaut's peaking at the right time. They played a decent game against Somerville and then come out and stifle Valley Christian into a matchup against Calaveras that's coming up that has a lot of playoff implications in the Mother Lode League.
Mm-hmm. And those negative 13 rushing yards came on 14 carries as well. So consistently, they were just bulldozing behind the line and getting there before they could even get to that line of scrimmage. Only one of their rushers had positive yards, and that was 1 carry for 2 yards in total. Great defensive stance. I mean, no matter what way you look at it, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. On top of that, Argonaut, I believe 80 receiving yards is what they ended with as well. So in the air, it was a little bit easier for them, and you can complete some passes as long as a defensive breakdown occurs. But, incredible by the Argonaut Mustangs in full. Jeremy, you had 28-21 Argonaut, and it doesn't matter. I had Valley Christian, so you're getting 2 points. But congratulations on getting that correct, because I don't think you believed it either. Honestly,
of course I did.
Maybe it's a little different, but before we're talking, you shared some thoughts, and we both thought Valley Christian, but you truly turned the switch and said, I think it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it was just kind of a feeling I had. I really impressed with Mitchell as at the offensive position at quarterback. He had a huge game against Somerville. It's contrast to what he had the week before against Sonora, where I think he had negative yards rushing against Sonora, and then came out and had a huge performance against Somerville, which basically carried them for 3/4 of the game and kept them in the game. He did his thing against Valley Christian. Now the question is, can he do that against Calaveras' defense, which has been the star of their team all year, this week excluded, last week excluded? I think that matchup's going to be a great matchup, and it's going to be one that's kind of an interesting thing to talk about later.
So 47-0 Argonaut. Jeremy, once again, you get 2 points. I said 42-21 Valley Christian. Not even close. Don't want to talk about it. Appreciate it. Leave your thoughts in the comments, but don't mention my name. Sonora at Calaveras is our third and final game of last week, in which we both thought Sonora was going to win. Kind of knew it. I'm sure you did too, Danny. We didn't know it was going to be like this. 56-0 at the half.
Yeah. 42 points in the first quarter is pretty insane. It was just every time they got the ball, it was a touchdown. It was just kind of an outclassing by Sonora, and that's kind of how it's been the last decade in the Mother Lode League. They've had some closer games, but this feels like how Sonora has been in the last 10 years. I believe the last time Calaveras beat Sonora was 2013, and as a former Sonora player and a Bret Hart player, Calaveras was always a rivalry for Sonora as well, because it always felt like they had the best chance to take down Sonora. This year is a little different. Obviously, Somerville has kind of stepped their game up in the last few years and become in that upper echelon of the Mother Lode League, but Calaveras is I think, a couple years away from being really good. They have a lot of sophomores and juniors up on varsity right now, and they play competitive ball. It's just Sonora's a different animal. And 3 turnovers for Calaveras and only 151 yards of total offense. Sonora just kind of shut them down.
Yeah, and I talked to some people earlier today about this game, and it was as bad as it looked, they said. I mean, it was one of those things where Sonora actually had a chance to not score 42 points in the first quarter, went and kind of ran a hurry-up offense to get that extra touchdown in the first quarter, and it was like, okay, what's this all about? And I was like, well, it's kind of a rivalry thing, but yeah, I mean, Sonora did what Sonora does, the teams in the Mother Lode League, and especially when you turn the ball over and it equates to quick touchdowns. I saw the score and I was like, there's no way this is correct. So I was actually texting a friend of mine that was at the game and said, hey, Guy, is this correct? He's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. I'm like, okay, it must be. Yeah, I'm like, all right then. I'm like, 42-7 in the first quarter is accurate. Okay, so.
Yeah, you texted me while we were broadcasting the Somerville game.
Yeah.
And I wasn't drinking anything while doing it, but all my saliva nearly just flew out of my mouth. Like, there's nothing to spit take with, so I just spit everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I saw that and I was at home and I was like, what? That's got to be the first half score. And then he's like, nope, it's just the ending of the first quarter. And I'm like, oh, ouch, that's going to be a long day. And unfortunately for Calaveras, it was. Now, flip side, Calaveras JV team apparently handled Sonora's JV team pretty well. And they're talking, and Calaveras is looking at the future. Hey, yes, this year is just a struggle. Next year we're going to be better. The year after that we're going to be really good, like what you talked about. And so they're looking for next year to be better and 2 years to be really good. And so that's what they're kind of looking at. They have a freshman quarterback on the JV team that they really like, and they're building and progressing with him. So it's going to be interesting to see how things go once we get to the new Mother Lode League, and Calaveras, Linden, Somerville kind of battle it out, and then you got the new teams coming in as well. So it's going to be interesting.
And what I mentioned when league started was that this is Sonora's last year in the MLL, and I think they were going to do everything and anything they can to basically rack up the biggest score possible against these teams to send a message and say, we've owned you for this amount of years, we still own you now, even though we're leaving. And here, I think they probably held back being able to score X amount of points in the first quarter, and then only ending up with 63 and allowing 14 points. But they definitely sent that message in the first quarter alone, no matter what the final score could have been. Just scoring 42 points in one quarter, that's enough to say, okay, we're done with you, and we're going to move on to the TVL.
Yeah, I mean, I've never seen a team score 42 points in the quarter. I mean, I've been on some teams that didn't do too well, but I've never seen someone put up 42 points in the first quarter. That's impressive.
Random question. Put this in basketball terms. What's end of quarter one score?
I mean, it's probably 35, 40 points in the first quarter. I mean, it's kind of similar.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of points to put on someone, and especially to hold them to 7 points in the first quarter. Like I said, yeah, hats off to Sonora defense for coming out and doing their job in the first quarter. Now the difficulty level, I think, comes up a little bit against Amador this week, just because Amador has a different offense than everybody else in the league. And so you guys got to see it last week. I think that's going to create some mismatches in the secondary situation. Can our Amador offensive line hold up against Sonora's defensive line? That's going to be a question mark too. And can Amador not turn the football over? That's if Amador doesn't turn the football over, they're a whole different football team than when they did, kind of like Danny Scott said earlier. So it's going to be interesting. Sonora did their thing last week. We'll see what they come up with this week.
We're going to get to that just about right now too. But Danny, what do you think about our new setup?
I like it. It's Jeremy's classroom. Apparently, you've had me with you guys the past couple weeks, but in spirit, not in person. So, but it's a good little setup especially for this.
Yeah, and we're here because the Sonora Conference Center is being taken up by people renting it out. I'm just going to take acknowledgement and say it's because of this show.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Meetingroomsondemand.com is the website you can go to in order to rent out Sonora Conference Center. There's other locations other than Sonora as well, through Phoenix, Arizona, Concord, Fresno, Sacramento, I think. They're everywhere. Meetingroomsondemand.com is where you can
Las
go for
Vegas.
that. Las Vegas, Henderson, Nevada. But for locally here in Tuolumne County, Sonora Conference Center, 4 unique rooms in downtown Sonora. Beautiful setup. Meetingroomsondemand.com. And you can't rent this place, unfortunately. But yeah, spiderwebs are cool, I guess.
You know, it's October. Got to get a little fall festivals themes in, okay? All right, let's take a look at this week, Levi.
Amador at Sonora. Amador 4-4, which means they're eligible for the playoffs, which is good for them after the last 2 seasons have kind of been blown away fairly early in the season. Sonora 6-1. Their only loss was week number 1, and that's to their 100-year rival in the Oakdale Mustangs. But still Motherlode League play. Amador traveling into the actual Sonora Motherlode side. What do you think? I mean, Amador, they're good. We've seen it, and then they fall off at the wrong moments.
Go ahead, Danny. I'll let you go start with this one.
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier, Sonora is the class of the Motherlode League, and they have been since they rejoined from the VOL. But like Jeremy mentioned, I think that Amador's offense has the potential to give them some fits, and I think Amador has kind of successfully scored on every team they've played, at least a minimum of 18 points, I believe, in every game. So they're a good offense, and it's whether they can not turn the ball over, like I've said a couple times already. But Sonora is very, very good, and even if Amador is able to put up a few points, I really don't see this being anything besides a one-sided affair.
No, I absolutely agree. My big thing was don't turn the ball over, okay? And Amador is the only team in Motherlode League play to beat Sonora, okay, back in 2019, 49-14. Now, you know Sonora is going to remember that, and they're going to be told that all week. And, hey, you already lost these guys before. You can't do it again. And I think it's going to be bad times for Amador. I really do. I don't see this being anything like you said. Even if Amador doesn't turn the ball over, which I think they will too, probably 4+ times, I think it's just, like you said, it's going to be a one-way street. I have it Sonora 56, Amador 12.
And let's not forget, Calaveras saved a beating for Amador. we have to remember that, right? Yep. All season long, from the very beginning, we said Amador was better than Calaveras after that first win. I mean, that's just the way it went. It was Amador at number 3. It's Amador. Calaveras is at number 4. It doesn't look close based on their common opponents, but Calaveras saved a special night for the Buffaloes, and it really changed the course of what happened next in the season. But Amador, they just scored 18 points against Somerville, and we've seen some teams score better against Sonora, and we've seen them score less against Somerville. It's a back and forth affair, so it depends on how they come out. If they can replicate the first quarter or the first half in total of what they did against Somerville, I think it's going to be a fun night for Amador. They'll probably get beat, but it's still going to be a fun night. Going out there and just playing a good game, it's always going to be fun. So I think Amador has the ability if given the chance. And that's just what I have to say about the whole Amador team. If they're given the chance, they have the ability.
I had a different score written down, but I think I'm going to change my mind because I forgot that Amador had beaten Sonora. And so I think Sonora is going to come in guns ablaze into this one. And I'm going to go 70-12.
I could see it. I really could. I mean, they put up 63 last week. Why can't they put up 70 this week?
I think they can get to that 70 mark. They haven't done it this year yet. I believe the last time they did it, I was on the field playing for
it was
Bret
the week
Hart.
after. It was
the week after.
Yeah, they played Highlands and put up 75. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Gotcha.
Thanks for bringing up old memories. I appreciate that. Back-to-back weeks, they put up 75+. Thanks, Danny. Thanks for that memory.
You were the offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I was the offense coordinator. We didn't put points on the board to help us. So that didn't help any.
But I could see them 70-piecing Amador this week. I originally had 63-18, but I think I'm going to add a touchdown to Sonora and take away a touchdown from Amador and go 70-12.
Okay.
Jeremy?
I said 56-12 earlier.
Oh, my
That's all right.
apologies. I have Sonora 56-19 of Amador.
Okay.
Yeah, 70. I guessed earlier, I think it was against Argonaut that Sonora was going to put up somewhere close to 70 points, and they held back a little bit. I think it was 56-0 was the final score in that game.
Something similar to that, yeah.
And, yeah, I don't know. I don't think Sonora wants to disrespect anyone respectfully, or they want to respectfully disrespect teams.
Did you see 63 last week?
I saw it,
Okay.
but they also allowed 14 points.
Yeah.
I could also see this being a try stuff out game for Sonora. They have Somerville coming up, and that's going to be for the Mother Lode League, their biggest rival in the Mother Lode League, the two best teams in the MLL. So I could see them really coming out and getting prepped for that game and going full steam ahead. And unfortunately for Amador, they're going to be the team that they try stuff out on.
And like you said, that's a great point. I mean, this week is the week to show something that you may not run against Somerville. So you may see a couple trick plays here and there, just so that you make Somerville spend some time at practice. Okay, we have to practice against this. We have to make sure we have this covered, even though hey, we're not going to run against Somerville next week, but you show it on film, causes another team to have to use a little bit of practice time to make sure that you do things. So that's a great idea. Great call, Danny. I mean, it's one of those things where you definitely could see some unexpected things from Sonora, and it could end up, working out well for them.
Yeah. And that's why we have Danny here in the first place. He comes up with the
The
smart
real
stuff.
Danny Scott.
The real Danny Scott.
Hashtag the real Danny Scott. Yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Can you make that laugh, by the way?
I mean, it sounds kind of like you.
We could.
That's pretty accurate.
They're pretty accurate.
Yeah, people across the river, Bret Hart people, Angels Camp people. Next up, we have the game of the week. All three of us said it immediately when we saw the game come up. Calaveras at Argonaut. Calaveras took down Amador. Argonaut scored 21 against Somerville. Break down everything every which way. This is going to be the best game out of the three in the MLL. This is one that I wish we can broadcast as well, because I feel like this can be just back and forth all the way through.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You say the game of the week, and you got two teams that have 6 losses, right? And you're like, well, how is this going to be the game of the week? But it really is, like Danny said earlier, this is a playoff elimination game. Because you have to get 4 wins to get eligible to playoffs. Both teams need one more win. Calaveras needs to win, and then Argonaut needs to win and beat Amador. So if Calaveras wins, they get to 4 wins. They have no games left. This is the last game of the season for them. They get there, then they got to wait a couple weeks and see if the 4 games and their strength of schedule is going to be good enough to get them a slot in the playoffs. Argonaut, if they pull off the victory, they know, hey, now all they have to do is beat Amador. All they have to do is beat Amador, your rival. And then you have a shot to get in the playoffs. So it really does kind of make it an interesting game to see. And like you said, I wish we could be there to watch this, because I think this is going to be a huge game. You have also implications of Argonaut's head coach used to be a coach at Calaveras the last couple of years as assistant. So they obviously know each other, and then there's a lot of stuff mixed in there. So it's going to be a game where I think it's going to come down to maybe the last play of the game, maybe last 2 drives of the game, and I think it's going to be a close game.
You kind of took everything that I wanted to talk about. Yeah, it's a very, very important playoff implication game. But I do think that Calaveras, in my opinion, has a little bit of an edge because they have a couple of really good running backs, and they've been playing decent football. They just took down Amador, and honestly, I feel like Amador is slightly better than Argonaut. So I would give the edge to Calaveras in this one, and I got 27-14 Calaveras.
I think, yes, Calaveras does have an edge in one way or another, but physically, I think Argonaut, since they're playing at home, one, you have the hometown crowd. They are very close to each other, but you look at the field. And Jeremy, you remember, it's long turf. They have a brand new field turf, but it's very long. It's slippery. Although they're wearing cleats, a lot of those players slipped when we were out there when Somerville played. And so I think Argonaut, knowing that as well and being able to play on that, it could give them maybe an extra 7 points in total. But even with that, I think Calaveras does win 34-27.
And I have the key for Argonaut, I think, is the Mitchell, the quarterback. He's going to have a huge game again. He's going to have to do everything on both sides of the ball. He's going to have to lead the offense and come up and make plays on that running game that you spoke of. I just don't think they have enough. I think Calaveras comes up and beats them. I have it 35-21 Calaveras.
3 fair scores there. Calaveras at Argonaut, the striking gold game of the week. And this comes down to our last one, Millennium out of Tracy, the Millennium Falcons. For copyright purposes, not going to do anything else.
There you go.
The Millennium Falcons at Somerville. Millennium, they're going to be a new addition to the Mother Lode League next year, but they're still building. Football program not very big yet, and they do have one, I don't want to call it a common opponent, but they do have one team in similarities, and that's Bret Hart, who their JV team this year beat Millennium 24-0. And based on what we know from the Bret Hart team and the Somerville team, probably not going to be the best game that we see this week.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those things where I think Somerville gets some players some rest. If they get a couple drives in, and then hey, you're going to the bench. Don't get hurt. Don't need you to get any banged up for next week, because next week's the basically a league championship game, so, you know, an unofficial playoff game, however you want to look at it. Millennium struggled all year. Let's just be real about this. They scored 30 points all year. They've got shut out in all but 2 of their games this season. So it's been a struggle on offense for Millennium.
They do have a win.
They do. They beat Riverbank in the first game of the season, 14-12. And I saw Riverbank play a couple weeks ago when I was down there, and I thought Riverbank was improved from that score. They're both coming in the middle of the league, so that's going to be an interesting next year. You talked about this being a matchup next year, but a league matchup. Unfortunately, yeah, I think it's going to be rough. The Falcons haven't scored in the last 9 quarters of play. I don't expect that to change this week. And so Somerville's defense, Somerville's depth, I think is going to get a chance to come out and play, which can be good for you. You get the chance to get some guys that don't normally get a lot of playing time, some action against another team, because you never know. You might need them next week against Sonora, or 2 weeks from now in the playoffs. Somebody might go down that you have to put a guy in that doesn't get a lot of playing time, and hey, they got to play against Millennium. They got a little bit of action. They got to see some film. They got to make some adjustments. Now they're in a starting role or a big-time role in a playoff game, and so that's kind of what you're looking to do here. This is kind of the reason that some college teams play a non-league game late in the season, just to kind of get some depth, because you know you're going to have a bowl game or a playoff game that you might need these guys later on. So it could be good for Somerville that way. Millennium, difficult situation for them. I just don't think it's going to go well. I have Somerville winning 56-0.
Yeah, I kind of agree. This one's going to be rough from the get-go. I could see Somerville's ones playing maybe the first quarter, and that's kind of about it. And we kind of joked about it before we started recording, but if any player wakes up with a cough, I doubt they're going to be playing on Friday night.
No, absolutely.
It's going to be kind of a get healthy game for Somerville and get right game. I'm still waiting for them to put together a full 4 quarters, and I think they have the capability of doing that in this one. But I think once you start to get the 2s and 3s in, the offense will slow down a little bit. So I have a little bit different. I still think they hit their quota of 42, but I got 49-0.
And I think even you take out the starters, you take out the secondaries, you bring in the third strings, no matter who you put in that position, Somerville is just too good. And you see a lot of teams, when they start making it towards the end, they run different plays, they put people in different scenarios just to break off that time. But I think a lot of those younger guys that will get some play time, I think they're just too good as well. And because of the seniors and the juniors being so much better, they don't have the opportunity to run this. So you don't just take a knee at the 1-yard line when you're up 50 points in 2 quarters. You still just have to keep playing the game. So I think it'll be 63-0 Somerville. So
No, that's absolutely, I can see that.
yeah, so we're all off by, I think, a touchdown apiece, if I'm not mistaken. So that's going to be fairly close when it comes down to it. And that's going to be at Somerville for their last home game, because the following week, the non-official league championship game will be at the Sonora Wildcats Dunleavy Field, which will be very fun, returning after last year's 35-7 victory, in which we thought Somerville may have a real good chance, and I think this year is going to be a little better.
Wait a minute, hold on. I think I picked Sonora to win big, didn't I?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was just checking.
We as in a collective county,
okay.
had interest
right.
in the Somerville Bears possibly scoring multi-touchdowns over the
all right.
multi-scoring.
Because I believe we made an intro to that game, and I think the only one that said Sonora was going to win. I'm not just saying. I just kind of remember that. I don't know. Anyway, yes, that's going to be a good game. Like you said, Somerville's already 3-0. They're in the league championship game. Sonora should get there at 3-0. Regardless, even if Sonora loses, they're still 2-1, and it's still gonna be a league championship game. So it should be a great time. I know we're doing the game. I believe we're doing the JV game as well. So a lot of chances for us to get to see good football and the county action. And it's going to be a good time next week out at Dunleavy Field. So if you can't make it, obviously you can watch Levi and myself do the game.
This week we have Amador at Sonora, Calaveras at Argonaut, and Millennium at Somerville. And before we wrap up, MLL power rankings, nothing has changed for me. I think it's going to stay the same. Jeremy, nothing changed in MLL play itself, so I think you might be in the same boat.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still with Sonora at 1, Somerville 2. I'm going to go Calaveras still 3, even though they took one on the chin last week. Amador's 4, but I think that one's closer than we think, or maybe some people might think. And then Argonaut at the 5 position right now. And then I don't see that changing too much, but you never know what happens this week.
Yeah, I'm going to go Sonora at 1, Somerville at 2, Calaveras at 3, and just to buck the system a little bit, I'm going to go Argonaut 4, Amador 5.
Oh, there
Wow.
you go.
And,
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to say I disagree, but even if Argonaut takes down Amador next week, it's a rivalry game. And more often than not, in rivalry games, one team's going to beat the other. It's a big thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're better.
Oh, you got to give it to them, though. If you beat them head to head, you got to give them the nod. I'm with Danny on that. If Argonaut beats Amador next week, then I got to go Argonaut over Amador. So that's what I'm saying. You never know in these league games, what happens. And hey, who knows if Sonora comes out flat and Amador shocks them again, then Amador's got to jump up a little bit, maybe not into that 2 spot, but they're a solid 3 then, and then taking over that spot from Calaveras. So there's a lot of moving parts there, and I think in that 3, 4, 5 section still to be determined.
I think 3, 4, 5. I think you got to give it to Calaveras right now at 3 because they beat Amador, but I think 3, 4, 5 is still pretty much wide open. I think a lot of it rests on this Calaveras Argonaut game this week, and especially if Argonaut is able to pull off what we consider the upset, but Argonaut is home. They'll be playing for a playoff spot next week, and for third place, a secure third place in the Mother Lode League, which I feel in Division 6 would give them a very, very, very good opportunity to be in contention for the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they might get 11 or 12 seed. It's going to be a lower spot, but I think you still get in at that 3rd spot in the Mother Lode League. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you.
And not only that, but I believe it's 2 years now, Argonaut Amador combining. So these last 2 games between the 2 schools, they're going to be fun ones.
Absolutely. And so it's a county rivalry. It's going to be interesting, and like you said, I mean, technically Amador's already qualified for a potential playoff spot. Doesn't mean they're getting anything. They just have that 4th win, but they could end up 4 and 6. So could Calaveras. So could Amador. So all those teams that are in that 3, 4, 5 spot right now still have something to play for coming into the second to last week of the season.
We'll see how this all pans out this week in Mother Lode League play. He's Jeremy Hurtado. We got Danny Scott.
Danny Scott Spirit.
Danny Scott Spirit. I'm Levi Flores. This has been Striking Gold.